live once again. Just get comfy, wait for some people to be watching. Alright. Muscles are sore because I've been very active today. I can't believe how hot it is still. It's October, and in England there's flooding in northern England, and here it's nearly 30 degrees Celsius. Literally had to have a little siesta today. Well, kind of, but yeah, it was hot. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello, Josie. Hello, Courtney, once again. Courtney, you are on the ball. You are one of the first always on to comment. Armani Trip. Hey, what's your name? I'm assuming it's not Armani Trip. I am going to be talking mostly about planets, because there's a lot about planets that gets me, well, I'm just very interested. We live on a planet. In fact, we're made from the same stuff as a planet. We come from a planet. So, what is that noise? Nothing. Nothing to be scared of. Alright. Hello, Lottie. Are we still going to Mars, Courtney? Well, I haven't put it in my calendar yet, but Elon Musk, the man who has a rocket company with an ambition to go to Mars, he says 2024, we will have humans there. That's not far away. I won't even be 30. Wait. I'll be 30 that year. Yeah, that'll be my 30th year orbiting the sun. And there'll be someone on Mars giving me at least 70 years, because I'm definitely going to make 100 years, to go to Mars myself. By then, hopefully it'll be a lot cheaper. Plus, it doesn't matter if you go when you're older and a little bit slower, because Mars's gravity is weaker, so it would be as if you were 20 years younger. Alright, so let me start off by sharing a fact I learned while studying the sun. It started with a question I had. How big is the sun? Because we know it's big. We know nearly all the stuff in the solar system. When you add up all the stuff from planets, comets, and all those things, more than 99% of the stuff is the sun. So it's got to be big, because Earth is, what, a few thousand miles? I think 6,000 in diameter. Don't quote me on that, but light can go round the Earth 7 times in just a single second. And yet it takes at least 8 minutes to go from the sun to Earth. So we know the sun is big, but how big is it? Well, the exact dimensions of the sun are constantly changing, and to be honest, I don't know on the top of my head the answer, but I plan on making a few videos with more accurate information. But my favourite fact that I learnt about the size of the sun is that if you could fit as many Earths as possible into the sun, how many Earth-sized planets could you fit inside the sun? The answer... Wait, why didn't you guess the answer? I'll give you 20 seconds to make a guess. 20, 19, 18... And we have no guesses so far. Yeah, that's great. 7, 10. That'd be a lot. I mean, if you ever tried to walk around the Earth, it would take a long time. Claire reckons 100. Lottie reckons 500. Courtney reckons a lot. That looks like it's more than 1 trillion. I'm not even going to try and say that in time before it's gone. 3 from Fluffy. Well, I'll give you a clue. It's way more than 100. In fact, it's way more than 1,000. You could fit at least 1 million Earths inside of the sun. Try and wrap your head around just how big that is. 1 million planets the size of Earth can fit inside the sun. Wow, that really blows you away, doesn't it? My ambition while I'm orbiting around the sun here on Earth, over and over again, I plan to walk around and explore as many places as I can on Earth. And maybe even Mars, and who knows where else, but certainly Earth is achievable. I've already been to well, dozens of countries, and there are like 140 odd countries. But just a single country, it can take a long time just to explore even a small one like England. I mean, I've not even been to half the major cities. And even when I go to a city, you know, a few days exploring it doesn't really do it justice. But to be honest with you, cities I enjoy going to because there's so much life there, and that really does excite me. And it's a great place, obviously, to interact with people. But personally, if I want to explore somewhere, I would always pick a wilder place, somewhere lesser known, more sort of off the beaten track, where I'll discover something that I didn't plan on discovering much more often. Plus, if I can combine that with visiting or just walking around in somewhere truly untouched by humans, like a waterfall, or, for example, I'd like to go to a desert. I've not been to one yet, and there are plenty about. A lot of the planet is deserts. And with global warming increasing the temperature, let's expect a few more too to crop up. I've lost track a little bit. I was going to talk about planets and I haven't even started yet. It's nearly 10 minutes in. Let's do that now. So, where do I want to start? That's right, Leia. Egypt. In fact, that's probably the first desert I'll visit because I'd love to see the pyramids and just sort of admire how many slaves had to be forced into labour to make it. No, that's not what I'd admire. Planets. Alright, let's start with the discovery of a planet outside of our solar system. This only happened within the last sort of, I think, this century, you know. Certainly the last 10 years has really accelerated the pace of finding planets that aren't the ones we know of in our solar system. This is amazing for a few reasons, because first reason, if we're going to find life different to life here on Earth, perhaps life more intelligent. Intelligence is relative, but let's just say they're more technologically advanced and maybe they have discovered more truths about the universe that they could share with us. That is such an incredible concept. Even a single sign of some kind of life form away from our planet would just blow the minds of the 7 billion people who live here, and it would completely change. In fact, I would go out and say that would be the single biggest discovery ever. I've got so many questions about aliens. I'd have to talk about them another time. But back to the planets. So if we're going to find planets, if we're going to find life, a good place to start is looking at the planets, because we're life and we come from a planet. And so what we can do is we can categorize what does it take for life to exist here on Earth. There needs to be water. It needs to be close to the sun so that it's warm, but not too close that it's too hot and life can't survive. Water can't be on the surface, for example. And although there are some extreme life forms here on Earth that can, for example, survive in space or extremely low or high temperatures, it's logical to start off with the sort of general ingredients that it takes for life. So water and the distance to a star. Plus, for example, if it was a planet orbiting around 3 stars, well, that's not going to be a steady orbit, because those 3 stars aren't fixed. They're constantly moving too. So the planet would be going from near to far. In fact, it would probably get thrown out of the system, such as the chaotic gravity. That, or it will go into one of the stars and burn. Wow, what a thought. So that's unlikely. Another factor to consider is like a length of time for life to come into existence. Because when Earth was created some 4.4 or 6 billion years ago, it took at least 1 billion years. Well, in fact, it took less than 1 billion years for life to start, but then it took another 3 billion years for there to be multicellular organisms. What that means is I'm made of trillions of small parts called cells, and those cells are made of even smaller parts, but let's just stick with the cell first. And so I am a multicellular organism. A single cell organism can be something like bacteria or a virus or other. Actually, don't know. Mostly those things, bacteria and viruses. So they've existed for about 3 billion years, but it took only, I think, I'm getting a little bit confused here with my knowledge, but it took a long time to go from nothing to something, and then to go from something very simple to something more complex that can, because once you can have two cells combine, well, those two cells can then combine with another one, and that's how diversity spreads, and you get more complex creatures like you and me, and a dog or a cat or other things like trees and plants. So that all takes time. So let's review. We need water. We need to be a certain distance to a single sun. If the sun wasn't big enough or it was too big, then the temperatures would be havoc. So you got to adjust a little bit the distance, but certain distance, water, and a length of time to get going, because it's not instant. At least not here on Earth. Perhaps life can exist without water, or in completely different places than near the sun. Anyway, this is what I look like when my brain stops working. If we're gonna find alien life, a good place to start is by looking for signs of a planet that has similar conditions to here on Earth. Now, if we could only look at the 8 planets and the other dwarf planets here in our solar system, that's a very small amount to search from. But if we could look through for... Maybe I should have a drink. If we could look at billions of planets, well, that's a lot more data, a lot more information. We're more likely to find life. But if we are the only life, then we could be looking for billions of years and never find anywhere else in the universe. Now, that might sound sad, but in some ways that makes us very special. If we are the only living creatures in the whole universe of billions and billions and just a load of planets, and so much space and time, if we're the only creatures to live, that makes us very special. And, you know, there's something to be said about humans specifically too, because I'm not sure how aware a dog or a monkey is of the bigger picture. Like, they might be aware of their house and their family and maybe a few other creatures they bump into during their lives, but they don't look up at the stars and wonder the way that humans do. And it's our ability to ask questions that sort of makes us, I think, more intelligent than other creatures, because by asking questions and searching for new things, we learn a lot more, and then we can use that information to live better lives, more complex lives. So if we're the only life out there, that means we are the only way for the universe to know itself. That is one of my favourite statements. That's not I didn't come up with that one. I think I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson say that. Because we're made of the same parts that make up planets and stars and anything else you can imagine, including black holes. We're all made from the same stuff. So we are the universe. We're not just inside of it. We are. This is the universe right here. There. We are the universe. And perhaps we're the only creatures in the whole cosmos that can think of the bigger picture and really appreciate it. So yeah, that's special. Another thing that would be special is that we do find signs of alien life. And then we can communicate, perhaps work with them and learn from them, and maybe create something like out of the films you see, like in Star Wars and Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, walk into a pub and you see like a green alien from Mars, or I don't know, some slithering snake thing. Let your imagination run wild. Just how interesting would that be? that would be special too. So either way, if we're alone or if there are many life forms, we're special nonetheless. In fact, if we did find life on another planet, then that would mean the chances of there being even more life on other planets goes up and up and up. Because if we're the only life that we know of, which is true right now, we haven't found any other alien life, or maybe they're keeping it a secret, those pesky governments. I don't believe that. I think if anyone found it, they just have to share it. It's just, like I said, it'd be the biggest discovery of our life. So, if we found a second place where life has come into existence, then the chances of there being even more just goes up exponentially. How exciting! Anyway, back to the planets. So we, in the search for life, we have found more planets, and there are some wacky planets out there. Let me tell you, there is one made of diamond. Seriously. Because diamond is a form of the element carbon. It's a lot of them, or it's more complex, they're more joined together. I'm not exactly sure, but diamond, yeah, it's rare on Earth, but we found a planet where diamond is abundant. So imagine if we sent a spaceship to that planet, collected some diamond, not even the whole planet, just, a spaceship-sized scoop, came back to Earth. Diamond wouldn't be valuable on Earth anymore, because we'd have so much of it that it just wouldn't be special. In fact, that's true of our history. We used to think aluminium was special. The royal families used to have these aluminium forks and cutlery, and that used to be very precious. Until we started mining it, I'm not exactly sure how you get aluminium. I guess you mine it, melt it, something. Either way, we started producing loads of aluminium, so it became less special, and gold ended up taking the mantle. But what if we found loads of gold suddenly underneath, I don't know, a desert or a sea here on Earth? Well then, gold would start to become less valuable suddenly. So yeah, there's a planet made of diamond. There are other planets where the wind speed is so strong, it's so fast. I mean, even planets in our solar system, you look at the storms on Jupiter or Saturn, there's a storm, a very famous one, you've probably heard of it, called the red spot on Jupiter. It is the size of 3 or 4 Earths, and it's been going for hundreds of years. That's a huge, that's a huge storm. We experience storms here on Earth that are catastrophic, but they don't go anywhere near the speeds or size that they do on Jupiter. Imagine if a storm engulfed the whole planet here on Earth. Well, that's what it's like on these other planets. I think it'd be quite hard for life to take place, unless they were like a hot air balloon. Maybe. So, let's see. What other wacky planets have I heard of? I don't know, maybe I'll speak more about it in another live stream in the future. Because I haven't refreshed my knowledge on them for a while. But I do know that in the last 10 years, we have found hundreds of exoplanets. Exoplanets are simply planets that aren't orbiting our sun. They're orbiting other stars, and we have found them. Now, the way we found them is amazing, because if you look in the night sky, you can see some bright lights, stars. Some of them are actually galaxies, by the way, of billions of stars. But yeah, when you look at the night sky with our eyes, you can see some of these stars and galaxies. But to see a planet? Well, we can see some planets, the ones near us, only a few million miles away. But if they're trillions and trillions and trillions of miles away, and that's just the nearest star systems, we haven't got a chance with our eyes. We need to use huge telescopes in places where the skies are very clear. That's why you often find these huge telescopes on the top of mountains. Or we can send a space telescope to go into space where the Earth's atmosphere or the air and other particles don't interfere with the image that we get. So telescopes like my favourite telescope, the Hubble telescope, named after Edwin Hubble, who about 100 years ago, he discovered other galaxies using telescopes. What a guy. He's got a great story. But either way, the telescope named after him has discovered some amazing things. One of the things, well, I tell you what, why don't you go on Google Images and type in Hubble telescope discoveries or something. They are some spectacular images. For example, nebula, where stars are being born as we look at the image. That's a pretty awesome sight. We have another telescope called Kepler. That's also orbiting our planet. And Kepler is famous for finding these exoplanets orbiting around stars light years away. Yeah, so we found a few hundred by now. Now, of those that we've found, I think I'm right in saying most of them are gas giants, like Saturn and Uranus, which makes sense because Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, those big gas giants, they're made mostly of simple elements like hydrogen, helium, and other gases. Whereas a rocky planet like us, or Mars, or Venus, or Mercury, we have more heavier elements. Now you might remember, to get heavier elements, you have to have a star that burns a lot hotter. For example, our sun, like most of them, burns the lightest element possible, hydrogen, into helium. But to make oxygen, for example, you need to have millions and millions of degrees Celsius. Our sun, in the core, where the nuclear fusion takes place, where light is born, that is a temperature of about 16 million degrees Celsius at the moment. But you need a lot more if you want to make oxygen, carbon, and other heavier elements. In fact, there are some elements that only come into existence when a star dies, or as it gets nearer dying. For example, take our sun. Our sun will continue burning hydrogen in the core for another few billion years, and it will have a death in about 5 or 6 billion years. So you could say the sun is middle age. It is halfway through its lifetime of about 10 billion years, more or less. Well, what will happen is the star will gradually grow in size because why would it grow in size, Robbie? You've forgotten, you idiot. Oh yeah, at the moment it's mostly burning hydrogen into helium. But when it runs out of hydrogen, it will start burning the helium. That will make the temperature of the sun hotter, and I think that's what makes it expand. You know what? I'm going to make a video about how our star dies. I will refresh my knowledge and make sure I'm giving you accurate information. Because I want to know too. I'm interested. Thanks, Meg, for the support. But this is what it's like to know things. When you guys say things like, "Oh, Robbie, you're so smart. How do you know this?" I just laugh because I'm no smarter than anyone, not in particular. I just have these curiosities, things that I'm interested in, and I go out and try and learn from the people who spend their lives learning about these specific things, and then I take that knowledge and then I try and share that with other people. And as I teach it, I have to, for example, when I'm teaching it to you now, I have to go into my memories and think of that information, which is a fun experience, and it helps me keep that information in my head, because otherwise it would just eventually fade away into the background and I'd forget about it. And I'd forget how special our universe is. Well, we can all think like scientists. I certainly try and do that. For example, you know what, maybe I'll address science and religion in another video, but me personally, religion doesn't add anything to my life. I'm interested in some of the origin stories and how other people find faith so interesting, but for me personally, I'm just so fascinated by the facts, the true stories of our universe, the things that we can test and prove, which is the scientific method, that is exciting enough for me. I don't need something else to believe in that I can't prove. You know what I mean? Right, I'm going to pick you up. Bear with me because I am very uncomfortable sat here in a yoga position, and I need some water too. Okie dokie. There you go. Is that alright? Whoa, what was that? Water is good, Emma. You know what? Once I've tasted water, I just knew I couldn't live without it. It's nice to see some of you girls connecting. If you can make friends from being a follower of mine, that would be... I'd feel... What would I feel? Proud, I guess. I don't have one either, Lottie. You'll only find me on YouTube because I find social media to be a big distraction and I much rather meet people in person. This is just obviously the best way for me to share knowledge. And I'm a massive YouTube fan too. I follow different people who I want to continue learning from or just be entertained by. Alright, well... Have anybody got any questions? Because I feel a little bit guilty for not reading your comments. Like, sometimes I read them, but I just can't address them because I'm because I'm flowing with my words. Oh gosh, I'm struggling here. So yeah. Is Pluto a planet or a star? Well, Pluto is actually a dwarf planet now. It was originally discovered and named a planet, but we have since found other objects in our solar system that are even bigger than Pluto. For example, Ceres is the biggest dwarf planet, I think. And so what we did was we started to recategorize what a planet actually is, and it just makes sense. So now Pluto is a dwarf planet. It's part of many other dwarf planets that there are in our solar system. And the reason it's not a planet anymore is because in order to be a planet you need 3 things. And Pluto, I think, only has 2 of them. Let's see if I can remember the 3 things. Okay, let's just start with the one I do remember. A planet can only be called an object can only be called a planet if it has cleared away the other objects in its orbital path. And Pluto hasn't. So in the path that Pluto takes around the Sun, there are other objects it hasn't cleared out the way. I think the second thing that you have to have in order to be called a planet is... You know what? I don't know. I'm surprised I don't know. I've definitely heard this a few times before. You know, I'm going to look it up on my phone because I want to know what that is. Let's see. I'll ask Siri. Here we go. If it ever loads. What do you need to become a planet? You guys are witnessing how I get my information, by the way. Let's see. Because I know you need 3 things. That's one. I'm tempted to say being around is another one, but that doesn't quite feel right. So, I was right. It does have to have a nearly round shape. And I'll explain that in a minute. It has to have cleared the neighbourhood around its orbit. Yeah, I said that. What was the other reason? Why? Where is... Oh, goodness, that is far too much to read. Okay, of course, it has to be in orbit around the Sun. No, sorry, wait. That doesn't make sense because there are planets called... I've forgotten the name. But there are planets that don't orbit a star, at least not anymore. And they're travelling through the darkness of space alone. I can't remember what they're called. Maybe one of you knows. This is really entertaining for you, I know, but just bear with me.
Okay, maybe that is what it is. Has to be in orbit around the sun. Has to have enough mass that it can achieve hydrostatic equilibrium, which basically just means that it has enough stuff that its gravity has moulded it into a near perfect circle. Not perfect, but near perfect. For example, the equator here on Earth, which is, if you looked at the North Pole at the top and you put the South Pole at the bottom, the equator goes around the middle. And it's called the equator because that's the path the sun shines over directly above. And it's also the hottest place. I am near the equator now, which is why it's sunny here in Spain. And the equator is actually longer than if you went around the poles, because Earth is a bit wider in the middle. It's got a bit of a chubby tummy, if you like. So if you were to race someone around the Earth, one way you could cheat is you could send them around the equator and you could take a shortcut and go around the poles. Okay, I'm pretty sure it's those three things. Now you see, I'm fact checking, so I'm not just reading it from one place. Now I'm going to read and look for some other sources. Because if, for example, I read it on one place and it's just some whack job typing away, a bit like me speaking to you, if I'm the only way you get your information, well then, I mean, unless you really trust me, which is actually quite dangerous. If you fully trusted what I said, I could say things that aren't true and you would believe them instantly just because you trust me. So it's good to have lots of sources of information, role models, and people that inspire you. That's what I try and do in my life anyway. I'm no Google. I can barely hold 1 billion memories in my head. Google can hold a gazillion. I made that word up. What are the requirements? Okay, so just to refresh your mind, it has to be in orbit around the sun. It has to have sufficient mass to make it a nearly round shape from its gravity. And it has to have cleared its neighbourhood around its orbit. Now, Pluto hasn't done that. Like I told you before, it's not the biggest thing there. In fact, Pluto has a funny orbit. Neptune, I want to say Neptune, it might be Uranus. Whichever gas giant is further away from the sun. I can't remember which. But let's just say it's Neptune. If Neptune is the furthest planet from the sun, Pluto, a dwarf planet, its orbit actually overlaps. So there's potential for those planets to crash. The potential of that happening is ridiculously unlikely. But we can calculate the potential of that happening. And if it is ever to happen, I would have thought someone would have told us by now. So I'm guessing it's not going to happen before the sun grows and then shrinks. And, oh yeah, I'll tell you the death of our sun another time. But the short story of the death of our sun is it will expand so much that it will reach the orbit of us, Earth. Certainly Mercury and Venus. And we're not quite sure if it's got enough fuel to engulf Earth. But either way, by expanding more than 100 million miles in all directions, just think how much bigger that would be. It can already hold 1 million Earths inside it. Imagine if it had another 100 million... Wait, am I getting it right? Yeah, another 100 million miles in all directions because it's a sphere. Because it's a sphere, yeah. That is a lot bigger. In fact, you could calculate. That would be 100 million times 1 million, which would be 6 zeros added onto 100 million. So if you added on 1 zero, that would make it a trillion, which would make it 100,000 trillion. You could fit 100,000 trillion Earths inside of the sun if its orbit reached Earth's orbit. If its size reached Earth's orbit. Wow. Now that's gonna happen at some point. And when that happens, all life here on Earth will be burnt to flames. So we'll have to leave, well, not us, because we'll be dead, but our descendants long in the future will have to leave our planet in order to keep having sex and having babies to keep their species alive. It's possible. We can do this. Oh yeah, and then after that, some short story this is. So the sun's death will be growing very big, and then it will shrink into a much smaller size, in fact smaller than it is today, and it will be a lot cooler. Other stars, if they are bigger, will not just expand, but then they will suddenly collapse in an instant in a supernova explosion. These are the incredible deaths of giant stars, and these stars, they don't tend to live very long, maybe a few million years, because there's just so much energy and temperature there, the gravity just can't hold on to it. And then it starts, and the temperatures, then it starts creating these really heavy elements, and the heavier elements have more mass, which means they have more gravity, so the stronger gravity, the force of it collapses, and then boosh, supernova explosion. Type in on Google supernova explosion. There's something called the Crab Nebula, which is something you can see in the night sky with a telescope, and that is a region of space where a star exploded kind of recently. I don't know how recent, but recently. And it's a beautiful image. That was taken by the Hubble telescope, which I mentioned earlier. And there are roughly one supernova explosion per galaxy every 100 years. I think that's right. And my final thought for this video is that there is a star called Betelgeuse. Now you can see this star with your own eyes. Because in the star, if you look for the constellation of Orion, and you look at Orion's belt, which is very easy to see because it's 3 stars in a straight line, and it forms the belt of Orion. He's holding like a bow and arrow. And if you find that in the sky, look at the middle star. I think it's the middle one. Well, it's one of those 3. That star is Betelgeuse. This is a star that is very violent as we speak. And this star will explode in a supernova explosion. When, we don't know exactly, but we know it could be happening right now. That's right. But if it were to happen right now, it would still take light years for it to get here. So would that give us time to evacuate? Well, no, because by the time we see it explode, all the blast waves and other horrible things that would kill us will kill us. So in some ways that's good, because when we see it, we'll be dead, and so we won't suffer, because it'd probably be more excruciating to know we only have like a few more months and then that'll be it. But then again, it might not explode for another million years. We just can't tell. We don't have enough knowledge about stars, and we don't have enough knowledge about that specific star. We just know it is extremely violent. It could explode at any time. In fact, my final thought, it could have exploded already, because Betelgeuse is a few light years away. I can't remember exactly. I'm going to guess 40. It's less than 100, I'm sure. That means it would take 40 years after the explosion before it would reach Earth. Therefore, every day that we have, every time you wake up, be grateful that today wasn't the day that Betelgeuse's supernova explosion reached us here on Earth. Because it could happen tomorrow. And with that note, I hope you've enjoyed spending time with me. I've certainly enjoyed rambling on once again about the things that I'm fascinated by. I hope you've enjoyed it. I am now going to spend a minute to read your lovely comments, or maybe you will be nasty, who knows, and then I will click the finish button. Any minute, Fluffy, that's right. But remember, Brody, it should be scary, because when it happens, we'll have nothing, there's nothing we can do about it, and we'll be dead in an instant. Literally in an instant, so don't worry about it. Wait, unless the supernova explosion happens, but the effects of it reach us, but not in a deadly way. So it could be like a more suffering way. That's possible. In fact, even if Betelgeuse has exploded and the light from that explosion reaches us tomorrow, it is possible that we'll be fine. Because it's at a distance where we don't know if it will... We don't know how effective we don't know how much it will affect us, because we don't know how far away it is. Because we do know how far away it is, but we don't know how big the explosion will be exactly. So there you go. But for me, facts like that, how the universe is out to get us, that just inspires me to enjoy my short time while I'm here. And also, it's kind of cool that it hasn't happened yet. Plus, if these events didn't happen, we wouldn't be here in the first place, because we are stardust. If stars didn't explode in a violent explosion, and remember, not all of them do, only the most extreme ones do, then we wouldn't be here, because we're made of heavy elements that only can exist, that are only made when a star explodes, because you need that amount of energy and temperature to create these elements. So we are walking and talking remnants of exploding stars. How cool is that? And basically, another event that could kill us is an asteroid. That could wipe us out in an instant. But remember, that shouldn't be something we're scared of because, well, okay, maybe we should be. We should have plans for these things. But if it does happen, well, if they didn't happen, then we wouldn't be here alive today. Because remember, 65 million years ago, dinosaurs were the dominant species, and they'd been around for 180 million years. They were pretty comfortable here on Earth. It was their planet. But an asteroid had a different idea in mind and decided, yeah, I'm going to go into Earth. I'm going to ruin dinosaurs' party. And then the mammals slowly took over. And 65 million years later, humans, like you and me, we are the dominant species here on Earth. So there you go. We wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the universe's deadly acts of violence. And on that happy note, I shall say goodbye. Thank you for watching. I will see you... I keep doing that. You will hopefully see me again, and I will at least see you in the comments section. Have a great day.